Right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you're located, for Go Virtual. If this is your first time with us, Turnkey tries to bring you information that can help you and your organization be more successful. Today, in these uncertain times of coronavirus and COVID-19, we are addressing a topic that we know is very concerning to all of you. Do you postpone your spring peer-to-peer events, or do you take them virtual? Before I introduce our panelists, wanted to cover a few housekeeping details. First of all, we are recording this webinar and we will be sharing it with you on Monday. We are also going to share the PowerPoint deck with you. And so you don't have to screenshot or take notes frantically. We're going to share all these resources with you following the webinar. Also, we want this to be a discussion. So we look forward to answering all of your questions. The best way to ask us questions is with the Q&A icon that's either at the top or the bottom of your screen in Zoom. If you throw a question in there, we will either answer it in real time or get to it at the end, where we will be sure to leave time for Q&A. And so again, for those of you just joining us, welcome, and we are going to be recording this webinar as well as sharing the PowerPoint deck with you early next week. So our panelists, first we have Katrina VanHuss, who is CEO at Turnkey. She has been developing revenue programs for organizations like the American Lung Association, the Arthritis Foundation, and March of Dimes since 1989 when she founded Turnkey. Her clients' successes and her dedication to research have made her a sought-after speaker. She also regularly shares her wit and business experience blogging for Nonprofit Pro, and is the co-author of the 2017 book, Dollar Dash: The Behavioral Economics of Peer-to-Peer Fundraising. Next, we have Otis Fulton, who is Vice President of Psychological Strategy at Turnkey. He also speaks regularly on the psychology of fundraising at national conferences. He writes a weekly blog on psychology and fundraising for Nonprofit Pro and is the other co-author of the 2017 book, Dollar Dash. He has degrees in social psychology from Virginia Commonwealth University and the University of Virginia. And last but not least, we have Vickie LoBello, who is the Chief Strategist at Turnkey. She has been working in the nonprofit sector in senior leadership roles for most of her career. Her passion is in helping nonprofits build to the future state that they want to achieve. She has expertise in all areas of nonprofit fundraising, operations, and organizational development. She has had the opportunity to implement many changes within the organizations where she has worked as a consultant or as a leader within the organization. So with that, I will turn it over to Katrina to get us started.
All right, thanks so much, Kelly. First and foremost, I want you to understand that we have never been through a global pandemic either, but what we are bringing to bear on this is close to a century of experience just on screen. Sadly, we're that old, and we've been doing it that long. I've looked through the participant list to see who I know, who I don't. Hey, Dave from Canada, good to have you here. But I wanted to understand what kinds of organizations we would have represented, because each and every one of you has a different set of variables in hand with which you must make decisions. What we hope to do today is to equip you to make some of those decisions. With that, I'm going to ask Vickie to jump in and again encourage you to feed us your questions, and we will do our best to answer them real time. Thanks. Vickie?
Okay. First, we need to define the questions. What outcomes are we after? And that primarily means you. We want to conserve the revenue whenever possible in the midst of everything else. Preserve relationships with constituents. That's our long game. And of course, preserve our employees and the good work that they do. Oops, sorry. My mouse has a mind of its own. All right, we're going to clarify language fairly quickly here. Virtual is simply moving from on-the-ground event to an online event, and that doesn't always mean live at the same time kind of thing. It can also mean that you're exchanging information online. Facebook, is something that you can do online. Most people talk about virtual, at least what I'm hearing from clients is, well, we'll just take our walk virtual. Somewhat easier said than done, and we'll talk more about that as we go. DIY is different than virtual. We see DIY falling into two primary categories. DIY evergreen, which is do whatever you want whenever you want, birthdays and parties with a purpose, pancakes and those types of things. And DIY signature, which is examples would include longest day, the Great Cycle Challenge, things like that that are time bound, that have everybody, your constituents, your participants doing the same thing at the same time. And live streaming is a communications channel, not a fundraising avenue. So we want you to think about live streaming in a new way as a new way to engage and communicate and work with your constituents. Okay, and live stream fundraising is a fundraising method using live streaming. Of course, virtual meetings, Zoom, Google Hangout, WebEx, etc. We mentioned this not as a fundraising stream at this moment, although it could be. It doesn't have that capability, but is a way to interact with the folks that you're working with. Just wanted to do a little bit deeper dive on primarily signature DIY challenges. These are really good properties to stand up as new properties, and we'll talk more about that. But signature challenges as well as evergreen will help meet your participant where they are and help to meet their needs. I personally prefer signature challenges over the other. Both have their place, but in a time like this where people are craving social groups and interaction, everybody doing a similar thing at the same time and in a creative way can be really fulfilling. Creating that sense of urgency, I'll say the challenge with Evergreen is creating that sense of urgency. When is it happening? How can you get people rallied around a cause at a certain time? And of course, the connectivity. You want to make sure that you're bringing a big group of your audience together, and they're helping motivate others or bring others into your effort or activity.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about fundraising and marketing. We typically see marketing as getting into the community with our brand. One of the foibles that I think our nonprofit community stumbles into sometimes is because the digital tools are so easy to use and frankly they're inexpensive to use for the most part. We believe that we can run a DIY campaign entirely through marketing methods, and what we know is that that just doesn't work. At some point we do have to deploy the human within that construct to help us make connections with people. So we say that really to give you some self-defense in some cases, because often from the outside, the peer-to-peer dynamic looks like something you could just turn into a marketing campaign. And it is not that. This is creating a movement with humans, and marketing tools are part of the answer, but human outreach is the other part of the answer. Human outreach on the part of staff, human outreach on the part of volunteer leadership, human outreach on the part of team captains, and understanding that we just can't email people into submission here. We have to accept. All right?
That's great. So the variables and evaluation of alternatives. Your organization's financial stability, how fast you need to make money, proximity and time to event, which basically means, some of these decisions are already made. I think the tough part that I'm hearing across clients is if your event is currently scheduled for July or August, it's sort of on the cusp of not sure exactly what to do with it at this moment in time. Your current investment in that activity, of course, your ability to maneuver logistically. Is there going to be space available? Should you postpone, or can you move that event out? I know there are a few clients who have mentioned that they had spring events that had to be canceled where a large percentage of the revenue was already banked, and are coming up with very clever and meaningful ways to thank those participants for the great work they've already done to fundraise for the organization. And then, of course, your impact on constituents short and long term. Otis.
Yeah, as Katrina said, it's really all about at the end of the day, how your constituents feel. And of course, this is a very challenging time for your constituents. I think that we, as the nonprofit sector, has a great gift that we can give to them when we do it right. People are very stressed right now, of course. I was telling somebody today, I don't even know if I should get a haircut. Even a haircut is a source of stress for me right now. And there's been a lot of research that shows that engagement in nonprofit activities and pro-social activities is a huge reliever of stress for people. So I think that my message is don't hesitate to reach out to people, because they're really hungry to engage. When we talk about being virtual, the problem with virtual from a psychological standpoint is that, again, unless we do it right, the participant goes from being a participant, participating, being engaged, to being an observer. And we know that when people are passive, they are not engaged. And this is a big problem. And you can put yourself in the position where if you're virtual and it's not entertaining or engaging, people are going to tune out very quickly. I was talking with someone about Twitch. That's the gaming platform that raises money and so forth. Twitch is incredibly interactive. You're actually watching something that you're interested in, a gamer. There's a chat going. You're looking at the chat. You're responding to people on the chat. So, that's a good example of, what we should shoot for. Also, people's need for connection is going to be challenged at this time. Psychologists talk about the need for connectedness, and we have an opportunity with whatever virtual we bring to bear to really have an impact on that. In terms of the engagement, I saw a great example from one of our clients, March of Dimes, although we weren't involved in this specific campaign. Yesterday, they sent out a PDF page with little funny mustaches and eyeglasses and so forth. And they're having their participants take pictures of their children with these mustaches and so forth after they cut them out, and then post them on the March of Dimes Facebook page, and as well as their personal Facebook pages. So, there are a lot of creative ways that you can use to get donors engaged, but it's that engagement that really is going to resonate with them. And then finally, what we really have an opportunity to do is relieve people's sense of powerlessness. I just can't imagine, as Katrina and I were talking about, we joked about the zombie apocalypse coming. Well, the zombie apocalypse is here, and it gives people, it really takes away people's sense of power, what psychologists call their agency. So anytime that we can show that your engagement results in some outcome, that's going to be very, very positive for people. And finally, let me just say that anyone whose organization has anything to do, even in a tangential way, with the coronavirus, like it turns out that prostate cancer people are compromised, diabetes, a host of other health care causes. Anything that you can do to connect that up with the coronavirus is really going to give your community a sense of power, and that they really have a tangible way to fight back against what's happening to them.
So if I could jump in, the biggest thing that I would like everyone on this call to take away is that when you're making decisions about what to do, and then once you've decided what to do, how to execute, this slide, these questions are the things to think about first. Because if you think about the math of the thing and the way that numbers work, if we focus on the constituent and we preserve them for the future, they yield revenue year after year after year. If we focus on this year and preserve ourselves this year at the cost of those constituents' later behavior, we lose in terms of math. We may be more comfortable today, but we lose next year, we lose the year after, and the year after. So if I could pound one drum, it is thinking about the constituents' needs first above our own financial needs is the path to long-term success. And that's the only reason any of us have any sort of nonprofit status, is because that's our job. That's our job.
And in lessons from the last recession, from the 2007 to 2009 recession, a study by Johns Hopkins showed that, yes, nonprofits lost 6% more of their supporters than they would have normally under normal circumstances. But what happened was their core constituents, the ones that stayed with them, more than made up for the loss in revenue with increasing their donations. So just to echo what Katrina said.
Your secret superpower, asking your constituents for help. You can help them at this moment in time feel less alone. I also want to say for everybody on the phone, you're not alone. Not only are these folks there as part of your community and your tribe, but it helps to know that there are people out there that will work with you, and you won't know that until you ask. But remember, some will say no, as they always do, but more will say yes than no. And Otis, you want to talk about the Ben Franklin effect?
Yeah, psychologists, I won't talk about why psychologists call this the Ben Franklin effect, because I have many leather-bound books on that topic, and I won't get into that. But there's something called the Ben Franklin effect, and this is what it is. When you do someone a favor, like we're doing a favor for the organization, it turns out that you like that person more than if the person did a favor for you. So getting our constituents to do favors, do things for us on our behalf, is a great way to build affinity, and will build affinity. But there's the one caveat that's very important. After they do something for us, do us the favor, we've got to say thank you. And we've got to say thank you very, very quickly. But, constituents, the affinity is really built in some counterintuitive ways. And this doing a favor for someone to build affinity is one of those that people don't often think about. Also, people are feeling socially isolated right now. This is a perfect time to ask for a favor. People are going to appreciate being engaged, and the more creative ways that we can find to engage people, the better off we're going to be.
I'm going to Hermione Granger this one. I feel like, if you're a Harry Potter fan, she's like, I got the answer. This is the answer. We have the opportunity to make this thing, to make some lemonade out of this thing. If you were ever thinking, gosh, I wish I had a volunteer network. Gosh, I wish they would lean in and help me. Gosh, how do I create a volunteer infrastructure? This is the answer. You don't have to know everything. You're not the expert. You weren't in a global pandemic before. It's okay to ask for help. And as Otis just explained, it's more than okay to ask for help. If you ask them for help, they will like you more. They will do more for you. They will help you find the answer. And if you apply analytics to all that, it means you will end up with more revenue. So this is a huge opportunity to install and or grow your volunteer leadership infrastructure. Okay, I'm done with the desk pounding.
That's good. Hey, Otis, will they like me more still, even if they say no? I'm just curious.
Oh, that's not a big factor. I can tell you, when someone's angry at Katrina and I, the first thing we do is, and by the way, Katrina and I are married, so just,
oh yeah, we are.
She talks over me all the time, so don't think it's inappropriate, because it happens all the time. If we've got somebody who is upset with us, or we can't win over, the first thing we do is say, well, what kind of favor can we ask of that person? And unless the person really doesn't like us, really hates our guts, they're going to say yes, because people want to comply. They want to comply with others whenever they can.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Oops, sorry. Too fast. What are the alternatives? Go virtual, on hold or postponed, cancel, and start new. We'll dive a bit more deeper into these four. Oh, we have a poll first. What are you going to do? It's an anonymous poll. I think Kelly's working the magic behind the scenes. There we go.
Magic.
This is an anonymous poll, meaning we won't know who says what, but we're asking you with regard to what are your plans as far as those options. Give everybody a minute to do their polling.
We didn't do this in the earlier webinar. It's going to be very interesting.
Very. And while we're letting people answer, we have one question or a description. There's a run event in Calgary, not their own, that was scheduled for next weekend. They changed it to a virtual event and continue to send out fundraising requests. My first impression is that they must be desperate. Why not just reschedule to a later date? I think Dave points out a couple of things. Number one, how tone deaf can we be right now than to send out fundraising requests without acknowledging the current situation? On Monday, we had a webinar about crisis messaging, and one of the things that we hit was what we call permission messaging, which is permission to take care of your family and still love the nonprofit and the mission, which is very effective and has gotten very positive response. We released the copy to the nation, and we're seeing it have very good response. Why not just reschedule to a later date? You know, we're going to run through that very question here and try and help them understand, and the people on the call understand how to make that decision. Maybe it was the right thing to do. Messaging that way, probably not the right thing to do. But, you know, moving it to virtual 2 weeks out, finding out the global pandemic, maybe it was correct to go ahead and change it to virtual, but I would have done it differently as well. All right, Vickie, you want to go over the results?
So thank you all for giving us feedback. Sorry, glasses. Love the fact that I need glasses. Feels like on question 1, what actions have you already taken? Multiple choice. More than half of the crowd are on hold or postponing. Second to that looks like is going virtual. So we have a lot of folks going virtual, no decision yet. And then of course, canceling and starting new. Action plans they plan to take, again, on hold, postponing, virtual second to that. So it sounds like we're at the end of this, or at the end of this pandemic, we might have some really amazing best practices about going virtual and achieving success.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Thank you. Okay. So the impact of going virtual on with your current properties. So that would be like, you know, what Dave just described, which is basically the event was coming up too quickly. They said, we're going to do a virtual event and asking people to go ahead and fundraise. What exactly that looks like as far as the participant engagement experience seems to have a lot of different answers to it, which is why I'm hopeful at the end of the pandemic that we'll have some really amazing best practices. But what we've seen in the past is virtual doesn't achieve similar revenue levels. I've heard some clients cite as low as 5 to 10% of what the physical activity will do. Timing, how much time you have to react. My heart goes out to everybody. You know, I have clients who have had to cancel or make decisions on this type of things for events that were scheduled for that weekend. So of course, when you make the decision on going virtual, time is not necessarily your friend if it's coming up very quickly. If you have a little bit more time, it might be easier to make that decision. If you go virtual, make it as immersive as money and time allow. And that means, you know, rather than everybody fundraising in their own corner, finding ways to talk to folks, get folks talking to each other, whether that's on Facebook or social or some other way, that immersive experience of some sort is critical to your success. And then design around the constituent psychological needs. Katrina, Otis, you want to say something about psychological needs?
Well, I'd like to say something about tools. I think, you know, when we have to stop, drop, and roll like this, the best place to find answers is in your local middle school. Figure out what the kids are doing because they are connecting to each other in amazing ways that we don't know about. We probably don't want to know what they're saying to each other. God help us. But, you know, they use tools in a different way. And I think there are some answers there for us to make it immersive and do so quickly. Using tools, even like what we're on today. Turnkeys allowed its employees to make use of our Pro Zoom account in order to connect with their families, in order to connect with their churches, in order to connect in any way they want to. And there's no reason we can't use these same tools in the hands of, for example, volunteer leadership committees or team captains with their teams in order to foster that same kind of connection. We're using it right now in terms of, you know, how do you go virtual quickly and not completely disenfranchise people by, you know, they are no longer under observation, as Otis would say. They are now spectators, or they are observers. So how do we keep them from becoming observers and keep them as active participants would be my thing. Otis, anything on this?
You know, two things in terms of people's psychological needs. One is connection, and it gets back to connection and agency, that they're connected to a community and that they're actually still able to do something that that matters. And I also think that we shouldn't underestimate the real power of bringing this kind of a tool like Zoom to connect people. Many people have no idea that you can do this. Katrina, why don't you tell the story of your church group, because I think they're very instructive of people in general.
Okay, so I probably curse more than any deacon in America today, and I'm the deacon moderator, and I took that job because I travel so much, or I used to, that I thought, well, I can manage the group using tools that I use every day at work. This will be great. It'll be easy. I can, make sure everybody's covered from afar. That didn't work at all, because my deacons were like, Zoom what? Virtual what? Honest to God, I could not get them to understand how to accept a calendar appointment. It was really bad. So, and they pushed me off, and it's been very difficult. Today, we have our deacon meetings by Zoom, and not only are they delighted to see a human face, they're amazed. They're delighted to be brought into conversation with their nieces and their nephews, because now they understand what they're saying. So what we're doing now, the things that we have been forced to do and we've been resisting for so long, just like my deacons, we are never going to go back. This is the way we live now, and it's amazing. And I really have huge hope that this is going to turn into something positive.
We have a question from the audience, which is, many of us are rescheduling our events to the fall. How do we feel we will fare if we have an overflow of multiple fundraising events, meaning volume will be very high in the fall? Because at least it feels like to me, every nonprofit is going to have a lot of fall events. And I encourage others to, in the Q&A, I believe others can weigh in here as well. And the follow-up is, do we think it will become overwhelming to donors? I'll say this, we've never done this before. I don't think anybody has an exact crystal ball. I do agree. I think volume is going to be very high for events happening and that kind of thing. I also think by the time fall comes around, donors and participants will be craving the ability to get out there and be with people again. I think we're, as much as we love the tools and that kind of thing, I think we're all going to be wanting that. As far as donor fatigue, in some ways, I think donor fatigue in some ways will be less than it is typically, because many of our organizations, in a smart way, work with our donors year round. So the donors are having a bit of a break, and then we'll have a lot of volume in the fall.
I think
anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing to consider, I think, is that we may not have events in the fall. I mean, we just don't know what's going to happen. So my encouragement to clients is to start an additional workflow. If you are 100% counting on your event happening in September, I would have a workflow moving that supports an alternative as well. And that's one reason why we include Start New as one of the options. And I would say Start New may be on everybody's list, because we can plan for September, but government policy may not let us have our events. We just don't know.
Okay. Impact of reschedule on hold, of course, unknown financial outcomes. As Katrina just said, we may not be able to reschedule to the fall. It might be pushed even further. Your constituent experience is at risk. On hold gives you some flexibility, of course, lets you understand what the current landscape and temperature is. The important thing on reschedule and on hold, whether that's to the fall or hopefully not as far as next spring, making sure that we're priming the pump. What we mean by that is embrace activity in the interim, even if it isn't a full virtual event or a new product stand up and that kind of thing, making sure that we're finding those ways. Otis's example is a great one from March of Dimes to get the audience talking to one another, have certain activities that are recommended by your group, whether that's your volunteer group that leads the event or your organization. And then, of course, nurture and communicate with team captains and top fundraisers. They are so important to our success.
Could I say something, that kind of ties in the favor asking and so forth? One of the things that I think would be well worth experimenting with is reaching out to your team captains and asking them if they would do you a favor and call 5 or 10 people that are on a call list that you provide to them, that are past donors, that are current donors, whomever, and all that these, not necessarily people that they know, but all that they have to do is say, hey, I'm Todd Franks, and I'm a team captain with the March of Dimes, and just calling just to check in on you, and I got your name on a list of et cetera, et cetera. And just have a 5-minute call with these folks to foster their sense of community. What they'll remember is that it was a great call. I love getting these calls. I donated $50 to the Virginia Commonwealth University. It was an alumni association. I got a call from a student, and she didn't ask me for any more money. She just called and told me a little bit about herself and said that you're helping people like me. It was powerfully motivating. I thought, this is what I preach all the time. And it just left me with such a great feeling. But there are all kinds of ways to use your team captains right now, besides fundraising, to really nurture them and to nurture your constituents as a whole.
I'm going to take a little aside. Maria has asked a question, and I'm sure it's on everyone's mind and related to what you're talking about. How do we ask for money respectively, when so many people are going through financial hardship right now? Otis, can you just do a little encapsulation of the Monday webinar that we had in terms of permission messaging?
Katrina and I were in Scotland 2-3 weeks ago. We had no idea that we might get caught out of the country. We just made it back in before everything started getting crazy. And I was at a 3-day class with the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy on really a donor-centric approach to fundraising. And the point here is that really it's all about how the donors feel. That's really the only thing that's important in whether or not they stay with you, how good they feel about you. And, for me, the takeaway was our organizations give people the opportunity to be heroes when we do it right, or healers, or protectors, or any number of things. And so that's something that people need in their lives. And to the extent that we can reinforce that, hey, you may not be able to leave your home, but you can still rescue animals. So I don't think that it's inappropriate for us to fundraise. In fact, I think it will be very good for people to feel that sense of agency, that they're actually doing something and being the person that they want to be, because that's what our organizations ultimately do. It gives them a chance to be the people that they want to be.
So how would you say, how do you do that without being tone deaf?
Without being tone deaf, I think that I got a solicitation from an organization, a cancer organization. It had no mention of the coronavirus whatsoever yesterday. It seemed so out of place. It was, it just smacked me in the face. But I think that messaging that recognizes where people are and says the work of the XYZ organization will still go on, and it will go on because of people like you. And then talking about some very tangible gains that the support that people like you are able to make possible or actually make happen. That's the way that I would message it. I would absolutely recognize that people are in this situation, but I don't think that is that in and of itself is not a reason to stop fundraising. In fact, let me just say, in the last recession, in the 2009, the majority of nonprofits said that they were either moderately or extremely financial stressed, and more than half of them at the same time launched new marketing campaigns and outreaches. At the end of the last recession, although it's different than this one, but it was still the same kind of a scenario in many regards. They all had resolved that financial stress by being aggressive, not by being passive.
Yeah. We're going to keep along this line because, this whole webinar is about you guys. So if you're asking questions, we're going to answer them. I worry about asking for donations with so many people losing their jobs. I think that for a deep dive into this, watch the Monday webinar, which is on our webpage and will be linked to in the follow-up email you get here. And also, I would watch Monday at 10. We're bringing in Dr. Jen Shang from the Institute of Sustainable Philanthropy. And what she'll be talking about is crisis messaging and asking for money. So those two things will be addressed in depth there. at that time. For a highly tactical answer on the Monday site or Monday webinar, we actually also shared actual copy to use and a pattern for the next 3 communications that could be effective in helping you not appear tone deaf, definitely not alienating your constituents, and still getting to the ask. So that information is held there.
Yeah, I think if people just go to our webinar page, that those resources are there.
Are there now. Okay. Vickie, did you want to lean in on this?
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add is for most of you, if not all of you on the call, the mission, the work of the organization must continue. And some of the people we serve are being even more heavily impacted by this than others. I agree. We've got to be very sensitive to where people are financially and you know, how they're being impacted, but also allowing them the opportunity to help others that are not in as good a place. And even if you've lost your job, if you're not facing a life-threatening disease, you might feel like you're in a little bit better place than others if they choose to and if they're able. Those are important things.
Yeah. Lisa, the Monday webinar will be recorded and released as well. So you will be able to get that. All right, go ahead, Vic.
All right. Okay, impact of cancellation. Of course, the financial hit is immediately and ongoing for the year. Psychological impact on constituents. Otis, you want to talk about that, or is that Katrina? Sorry.
Let's go ahead. Let Katrina weigh in on that one.
Okay. So I feel, you know, the people who registered for your events and especially the ones that have activated to fundraising and fundraised last year, meaning your core constituency, if we simply cancel, we abandon. We just abandon, particularly if we didn't ask their opinion and we just canceled. You know, we can wrap it in as much COVID-19 as we want to, but you didn't ask my opinion. You didn't ask me what I thought. And now what? You know, because I was using that event experience as a way to connect. So I think getting out there very quickly, how do we give them points of connection with each other and with us to replace that experience is super important.
Of course, canceling, not an easy answer, but can become the answer going forward. So making sure that we're thinking of the long term, that we're going to be there for our constituents, and making sure you communicate the plan as much as you have a plan. And that might just be, hey, we're going to recircle and bring you back together again and talk to you about it. But for now, this is the best choice for the organization. And of course, whenever possible, talking by phone. We have another question or two, Katrina.
Some in the public from an anonymous attendee, some of the public might not think my organization does important work, or I'm sorry, does important work, but doesn't do critical work like cancer, shelter, hunger, etc. We are an arts and culture museum. How do we ask without sounding tone deaf? I'm going to give you pure opinion from my part, and then I'll let Otis and Vickie weigh in. Pure opinion on my part is, at this moment in time, we need to gain affinity and not money. You know, this is an opportunity because you have a following. Simply to, maybe you're delivering by email and virtually some of the same content as is in the museum because people are desperate for engagement and entertainment right now. But I don't think at this moment for anybody really, except, you know, organizations with compromised populations, I think it's very hard to make an ask at this moment. As soon as we see a ray of hope, I think it all changes. Then we can take a different path. As soon as the trend line on diagnoses and deaths goes down instead of up, then I think we can re-engage. But at this moment, I would say, you know, and this is what we at Turnkey are doing, to be very frank. We are giving away what we have for free until things get better, because this is our moment to increase affinity. That's what we're doing right now. We're giving it away for free, what we typically charge for. And our hope is that later this will come back to us. So I advise the same. Vickie?
I agree. I think it's really about building affinity. Otis, anything else? We do have another question or a comment.
You know, just let me say, you know, arts, cultural organizations were the hardest ones hit in the last recession. They did rebound, however, and I would just echo what Katrina said. You know, the donor-centric approach, rather than approaching people with, this is what we do, approach people with, this is what you can do. You can provide school children with this cultural experience. You can. Put people in a position to make themselves the hero.
That's great.
We have another question. It seems to also be a great opportunity for mission volunteer opportunities for those who may not be able to financially provide support. Amen, sister or
Yes.
brother or whoever you are.
Wherever you are.
But I cannot agree with you more. That I would put in the column of increasing affinity. If we can give someone a job, give them agency, as Otis says, let them not feel powerless, that's amazing for them. It helps us and it helps the people that they're helping. I think these are very, very good ideas.
Absolutely
All right.
agree. The only way you'll know that, though, is if you have the conversation. So, there are all different ways of giving. Not all of them are financial. So great comment. On something new, consider starting a new property. We talked about this, whether that's starting up a new do-it-yourself event activity, and that means all virtual, not physical and virtual. Something that is specific to this moment in time, rather than trying to create an experience that is a shadow of what was before. Build a new norm. So engaging virtually, if your organization hasn't done that, you haven't done the whether it's the longest day or some of those other virtual activities, this could be a new norm for you. We'll build up this property separate and apart from this, and some folks may go over to that. This is that moment in time where many of us, and I have many clients who worry, I know I did when I, with other organizations, that you're going to cannibalize one product line for another. Believe it or not, that doesn't happen very often, but even in this moment in time, you don't have to worry about that. And know that you'll have two different lines of work going, especially if you lean in on the postponement. If you're postponing one and building new, we just need to think about that thoughtfully as far as how we can make sure that it's a meaningful experience, whatever they choose to do. And then, of course, on new properties, typically revenue is neutral in year one. As we've said before, this is a very different circumstance. That may not be true in this circumstance, but that is the typical outcome for a new property.
Vickie, I'd like to pound the desk again. We're trying to plan for something where we don't know what's going to happen. But here's one thing we do know what's going to happen, because it's happening right now, is that our environment is changing. Our constituents are changing in terms of their comfort with doing what we're doing right now. Their skill set is changing because it has to. Some of the things that are happening right now have been things that needed to happen. Yes, we needed to learn how to use these tools. Yes, we needed to quit driving to work, because in fact, I can work just as well from my home. We needed to do a lot of these things, and now we are. It's not going to go back the other way. So when I say we need to also build something new, it's not just because we're in a crisis, it's because our population has changed now. What they can do and what they will accept from us has changed. I highly recommend putting in brand new minds. I think the human inclination to cling to the past is so strong that sometimes we don't know we're doing it. Having people who have no attachment to the way things are now, particularly in the peer-to-peer setting, which is where we spend most of our time, is really, really important. Designing without baggage is really, really important. And there's no reason not to do it right now, because it doesn't matter about the crisis. What matters is that our constituents have changed.
We have one fairly quick, which is, I'm glad somebody brought it up. Should organizations consider a blend, postpone and take something virtual? In best case scenario, what I've seen with virtual is when you have a physical event and people who are have challenges either getting there because of logistics or because they can't be exposed to other people, join virtually. I know of a couple of properties and nonprofits that are, for a single event, raising a couple $100,000 from virtual attendees to a physical event. So absolutely, blending is an option. And the other one is, what do we think about using Facebook or Instagram to ask if anyone needs anything? 4,000 followers. We have people within that community that may be able to help. Otis, Katrina?
I'm going to get there first because I talk over Otis all the time. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it is not only fantastic in terms of helping the nonprofit, I think it's a fantastic human thing to do. You know, to help people find a way to help others is amazing. Facebook is also great because it makes your pro-social behavior incredibly observable. I will mention another app, and I haven't figured out how we in our industry put it to work yet. Facebook owns another property called Nextdoor, if anyone's familiar with that. Nextdoor connects communities in a Facebook-like setting. So for example, when I use Nextdoor, we do a lot of work with homeless populations at my church. When I'm soliciting for help or for food or for money, I go to Nextdoor to do it because I know I'm communicating within my geography. Organizationally, I don't believe there's an apparatus for that within Nextdoor, but you have people in that platform who are your constituents that you can ask them to go to their neighborhoods to say who needs help. So anyway, as an aside, Otis?
No, that's a great favor to ask for people. I was going to mention Nextdoor. And Facebook also is just a great multiplier because you can thank people on Facebook, on their Facebook accounts, and all of their friends see you thanking them, which is absolutely enormous and satisfies what, I don't know if I talked about image motivation, but people are motivated to have a good image in front of their peers that they do good pro-social work. So you really get a big bang for your buck out of thanking people on Facebook. It is so very public.
So a million years ago, when I started this company, we were purely a product recognition company, and our clients would spend on average $15.51 for a long time. That was the number on sending a gift to a fundraiser in thanks. Here's the problem. It happened afterward, not during, so I can't impact this year's behavior. Showed up at their house. Nobody got to see them get it. I would rather now spend my $15.51 paying an hourly worker to get on Facebook and thank people out loud. And that is money that is much more well spent. And this is coming from someone who makes a living with product, you know, occasionally. So I just think it's a much better way. It is the way we live now. It is recognition that works now. All right, Vic, back to you.
Yep. Okay. Whoops. All right. No matter what you do, people are more able to operate virtually. Embrace that and help others to do that as well. Live streaming is now part of life. We're live streaming right now, aren't we? Does this count? Yeah. Yes. Make sure your tools are serving your needs. I think while there's some great tools out there, sometimes when you if you have limitations, Google Hangout, the free version, I think only allows for 5 people or something like that. I might be wrong on that, but make sure you're thinking about what the limitations are before you put that out there. Conference calls are still happening, but the disconnectedness that you get when you can't see people doesn't serve the needs that we're recommending here. And then, of course, use your superpower whenever possible. Next, we're going to talk a couple of minutes. We're running out of time on forecasting. Katrina?
I think
we have a poll.
We have a poll. All right. Kelly, you going to kick off our poll? All right, while she does that, I'll talk a little bit about what is next. We're also going to bring up a calculator live that we're going to release to this group. The calculator is one that we developed for happy times, so we're editing some of the language to make it reflect the times we live in now. But it will help you with your forecasting and scenario planning in terms of revenue decreases. So there will be a couple of factors in it. You can put in your number of participants and the amount of revenue that you experienced year 1, and then what declines you may expect in participation and or retention in year 2, and those 2 things will help you come to a revenue number. So I don't see the poll coming up, so
no,
I am going
see the poll.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the calculator, if that's all right.
I'll stop sharing so you can do
All right.
that.
I will clear my screen of all these little boxes.
While you're doing that, I just want to mention that one of our clients, Susan G. Komen, has been urging their affiliates to start, what can we do to help groups in their areas since most of their spring events have been postponed, and then sharing them on sharing the moments on Facebook pages and etc.
All right, I see the poll up now. If you guys could do that, and then we'll hit the calculator after that. No idea seems to be leading the pack coming around the bend. And whoever said flat, I love you, that is awesome. So it looks like a lot of us are still trying to figure this thing out with scenario planning. All right. And no idea, 63% of the folks are in that bucket. All right, so let's go to the calculator now. This is something that is live. You can go to it if you want to check out up here. This is the web address. You'll get it in your recap email probably Monday morning. But feel free to go there now. We are editing as we go. The math is solid, but some of the words and such we're still editing. But, you know, these are new times. We're releasing it today. So there you go. So I'm going to work through an example right here. Put in your number of participants. Let's say you got 500 people. We're raising $50,000. Do I have a reg fee? Yes, I do on this particular one. My retention from last year, we're going to say is 50%, which would be more reflective of like a 5K probably. We find walk environments have a lower retention. Anticipated change in participation. This is total participation. So let's say we're going down 25%. I think that's a fair number. This is the number that we are encouraging you with everything in our souls to focus on, the people who already love you. But let's assume we're going to lose 5% of those people. Click calculate, and then what you're going to get out of it is your anticipated participants. This is what you put in. This is what you put in. The people who return will raise on average $106. Or, I'm sorry, this is your returned, the retained person. The new person who comes in, an average of $94. Change in revenue for returners, for new. And then this is your total calculated change in revenue. So you can play with this and develop different scenarios for your organization, trying to figure it out. If you want more help, we will provide as much as we can to you. I'll give you a little trick here. If you do have a registration fee, the numbers calculated here are only participant fundraising. So if you have a reg fee of $50 and you know you've got 375 registrants, then you add that to the top. If you have no reg fee, we'll go up, we'll change that. No reg fee, we're going to recalculate, and you can see what happens here. So there's your new number. So play with this. If you learn something from it, like there's a glitch or something, if you would let us know, that'd be great. Heck, if you see typos, let me know. That'd be awesome, because we are trying to release assets into the wild in as quick a manner as possible. All right. Okay. Back to you, Vickie.
That about wraps it up. I can reshare the final slides. No, not there fast enough. There it is. All right. We did our poll, did our calculator. Any additional questions before we end? And
all right.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
If you're typing right now, that's fine. But also, if you want to hit us by email, as we said, you know, we feel like our job right now is to help you in as quick a way as possible and as meaningful a way as possible with anything that we have to give. It is quite literally a time that we have to lean in together. So don't be shy. We'll do our best for you. And we're kind of working off the book now anyway. So it's helpful to us to understand what's happening in your world. We're trying to bring the information together and reshare it in as quick a manner as possible, synthesize it and get it back out to you. So your questions, your experiences are incredibly helpful to us and to other people right now.
Katrina, I'm going to ask you to plug Monday's webinar one more time, because my guru Jen Shang will be with us from the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy. Please plug it.
Yes. Jen Shang is a tiny little delicate looking woman who is a force of nature. I think that I feel certain on webinars, she will grab her screen and shake it because she's trying to make her point so heartily. Basically, at the heart of her work is a way to, in the same moment as you are fundraising, to increase affinity on the part of your constituent, which coincidentally and happily increases their well-being at the same time. So, you know, her philosophies are entirely in line with ours. We primarily focus in peer-to-peer. She primarily focuses in direct response. But as she says it, if they're human, this will work because it is built on evolutionary psychology. She's the world's only philanthropic psychologist, graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Lilly School of Philanthropy. And she's a rock star. So you will learn a lot. It is deep stuff. Bring coffee, send me coffee. That's all I got. Okay.
Thank you all. Best of luck.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. As we say in the South, love you, bye.